Baldur's Gate 3 is a game of choice and consequence, and the hardest choice you'll make is in character creation. Do you make a custom character or play one of the 7 origin characters? Today, we're going to break down each of these origin characters, talk a little bit about them, and if you should choose them or a custom character. Let's go! Let me know in the comments which is your favorite origin character and if you're going to romance any of them. So first, let's talk broadly about what a origin character is. So the origin characters are predefined characters with unique stories, desires, and attitudes towards the world around them and around you if you choose to play a custom character, as all of the origin characters except one will appear in the game as general companions if you don't choose them as an origin character on the character creation screen. Whether you choose an origin character or a completely custom character is mostly up to you, but what I will say is that if you're unfamiliar with D&D classes or Larian Studios RPGs or CRPGs in general, you'll probably have an easier time getting an understanding of the game's systems with a predefined character on your first go round. But Baldur's Gate 3 is designed to be played multiple times with different stories, choices, and consequences that you will experience. So really, why not just do both? But before we get into these origin characters, I just want to say here that I'm going to avoid any real spoilers with these origin characters in terms of like their backstory or things you learn from the early access. So if you've played the early access, you're probably going to know a ton more about these characters than what I'm going to talk about in this video, but I'm purposely avoiding that information because I want people that are jumping into Baldur's Gate 3 for the first time at launch not be spoiled of anything that really occurs, even if it's in the early access period that we've all sort of been playing for the last 3 years. Let's start with Astarion. Now, Astarion is a high elf rogue with a noble background, but that's not all about his background you need to know. Astarion is also a vampire spawn. Astarion prowled the night as a vampire spawn for centuries, forced to follow the orders of his sadistic master Cazador, seducing every fool with a pulse and luring them back to Cazador's lair. Now, Astarion is free for now, but that past will definitely be involved in his journey throughout Baldur's Gate 3, as well as his background of actually growing up in Baldur's Gate itself. So once you do reach that city, that will definitely be part of his storyline as you really come involved with what has happened to Astarion throughout his past. Now, Astarion as a high elf does have access to the Firebolt cantrip and also a special vampire bite ability because of his vampire skills. For his actual skills, he does come with acrobatics, deception, history, perception, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth. And stealth is a core part of any really rogue's sort of a background, and rogues really do excel in sort of stealthy sneak attacks and that sort of a playstyle. You do also get an additional bonus action as a rogue, so you get a bit more versatility in combat to do things like dash around and increase your movement in combat, do additional attacks with that extra bonus action, but you can also lean into some minor wizarding spells if you choose to play a rogue arcane trickster. But other than that, I would say the main thing you need to know about Astarion is the past that we mentioned, and you're thinking in terms of alignment, which isn't really a thing in Baldur's Gate 3 because of the way that you can make choices for people. I'd say Astarion is sort of like a neutral evil. Like, he's not outrightly evil, he can be cruel and egotistical and sort of not care about some people sometimes, but that's really because of his past, and you know, it's really up to you as to where you take that character. So moving on to Gale. Now, Gale is a human wizard with a sage background, and Gale was a formidable archmage in Waterdeep, but pushed his relationship with the goddess Mystra too far, failing to usurp his former lover's godhood. The goddess stole Gale's magic away and cursed him, and exactly what that means, I'll leave up to you to find out. But Gale, being a wizard, absolutely excels in arcane spells and magic. Now, even though most of his power has been taken, you still are a formidable mage, even at level 1, but you will start with Arcana, History, Insight, and Investigation skills as Gale. As a level 1 wizard, you can really take him in any direction. Now, also worth mentioning that with the full launch of the game, all of the magic skills will be in the game, so you'll have all of the wizard subclasses to choose from as you level up as Gale. But ultimately, as Gale, you will be a ranged magic wielder, casting spells, whether that be to damage enemies or to, say, put them asleep or any other effects that you can do, but primarily you will be attacking from ranged and quite squishy because wizards do have a low amount of overall hit points. In most situations, Gale presents sort of an arrogant exterior, but he's very like analytical in the way that he thinks, but he can be caring occasionally. Like, he's probably a neutral good sort of an alignment character. But Lae Zel, on the other hand, definitely not. Lae Zel Zel is a Githyanki fighter with a soldier background. Now, she crashed down on Sword Coast from the stars. Lae Zel is a fierce warrior, even by the standards of the militant Githyanki society. When faced with the possibility of becoming a mind flayer, the monster she has dedicated her life to defeating, she must prove her worth and earn the right to rejoin her people if they don't execute her first. So, Lae Zel is a young Githyanki warrior, eager to prove herself to not only to herself but to her race, and she's very loyal to her people and proud of her Githyanki heritage. Now, something we haven't touched on yet specifically is that the race of any character you choose, custom or origin, will definitely play a huge part in your dialogue options and the interactions that you do have. Lae Zel as an origin character is probably the biggest example of this in terms of the different origin characters. Maybe one other that's a little, maybe more because of the freedom. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but the Githyanki people are going to be a prominent part of this game, even in the early access, and it's worth noting that her race will definitely play a factor in her relationship with other people, as well as the relationship with her own people, and when you come across them in the game. So it's just something worth mentioning, but she is definitely a more evilly aligned character, probably sort of like a lawful evil. She's very arrogant, she's racist, she's cruel, and she won't hesitate to really hurt anyone that gets in her way, and she'll absolutely tell you about it before she does it. But she is a fighter, so Lae Zel being a Githyanki fighter is really a melee focused class. You do have some ranged options as well, but you are a big sort of a brute class leaning into strength and constitution, as well as some armor that you can wield to be able to tank some of those hits yourself. In terms of skills, Lae Zel has athletics, acrobatics, arcana, survival, and intimidation. And you do also have Mage Hand as a cantrip because you do have that Githyanki heritage that she is. But in combat, you'll probably play a sort of a two-handed heavy weapon user, potentially some sort of a tank, depending on where you can take that class, but that's sort of the general breadth that you get from a fighter. Shadowheart is a half-elf cleric with the urchin background. Now, Shadowheart is a devoted cleric of Cher, the goddess of darkness and loss. Shadowheart agreed to have her memories wiped as part of her holy mission. She is now the sole survivor of that mission, and she must deliver a powerful artifact back to her kin in order to win Shah's love and have her memories restored. I'm not entirely sure what I think her alignment would be. Maybe like lawful neutral, or just, yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't really thought this one through, so let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, I guess. But anyway, so as a cleric, Shadowheart is a support, sort of a focused character with the ability to heal and buff allies, as well as tank some damage because of the fact that you can carry a shield as well. So you've got a lot of options in terms of the class. She is a trickery domain cleric, which gives her access to stealth and illusion magic that clerics wouldn't typically have, but even still, the key focus is on sort of supporting your allies, debuffing enemies, and tanking a little bit because of that sort of sword and board general setup that you do have as a cleric. Shadowheart skills are sleight of hand, stealth, religion, and insight. Next, we have Wyll. Now, Wyll is a human warlock with a folk hero background. And before we get too deep into Wyll, I do want to mention that it has been mentioned in the reveal showcase panel from Hell that Wyll's character will be changing with the full game. So some of his backstory and character arc has been rewritten, and he does have apparently a new voice actor as well. So things here may change, but based on what we know about Wyll right now, he was a member of the Flaming First Mercenary Company. At a moment of weakness, Wyll was drawn into a Warlock's pack by Mizora, who has cursed Wyll into hunting her enemies for her. Wyll wishes to escape the pact before the price grows too big. So Wyll is an interesting character. Now, he does view himself as a hero and will most of the time try to do like the right thing, which, you know, is probably a good alignment to some regard, but obviously with that checkered past, he's not all positive. Wyll is a warlock of the Fiend subclass, so you do get access here to some very powerful spells as your main sort of a goal here, but you do have less spell slots than general spellcasters, so you'll lean more into your cantrips, especially Eldritch Blast, which is a very powerful cantrip that warlocks have access to, which you'll basically just spam as a warlock all day. But Wyll's skills are Arcana, Animal Handling, Survival, and Intimidation. We'll move on from Wyll because I don't want to spend too long on him in case it changes, but we'll move to Karlach. Now, Karlach is one of 2 additional Origin characters that will be added to the game with launch. She's a tiefling warrior, and we don't currently know what her background is. Karlach is fresh escaped from Hell. Karlach is finally freed from the Archdevil Zariel, but not from the infernal engine Zariel material planted in her chest. With her first taste of freedom in 10 years, Karlach is eager to find a fix for the engine that's burning hotter and hotter before it burns her out completely. She escaped by jumping onto the Mind Flayer ship to escape hell, but got stuck with a tadpole like the rest of the characters. Now, Karlach has been described in the reveal showcase as a good, loyal character, and probably the most good of all these origin characters, I think, to balance out some of the more neutral and evil characters. But as a barbarian, she will have a strong martial prowess and use that rage mechanic that barbarians have access to sort of dominate, especially in melee ranges. With the range mechanic, you want to be either dealing damage or taking damage in order to keep that rage active. Karlach is an unknown because we haven't actually had her as an origin character or like a full-fledged companion yet. So her specifics we don't rightly know, but we do know that she is good aligned and a barbarian, and probably going to be one of the fan favorites, I think, based on what we've seen in the reveal showcase of her character. The last origin character is a little different, and that is the Dark Urge. Now, the Dark Urge is a custom origin character, so that means they can be any race or class, and they are Dragonborn by default, but you can change this. Now, the Dark Urge is not recruitable as a companion if you don't choose them in character creation. So they will apparently appear in the game if you don't choose them during character creation, but they won't be a companion that you'll bring with you. Now, the Dark Urge remembers nothing of their past and are played with a sick, dark urges of violence and cruelty. Whether you choose to give into those urges or try to resist it is up to you. This is a very unique sort of a setup, and they're definitely evil focused, but you don't have to lean into those evil urges. You could try and resist them if you choose to. But I would preface this by saying that this isn't like picking an origin character like the others. You're really going to be role-playing a very specific type of character if you play as the Dark Urge, right? Because of those urges that you're going to get, they have added a bunch of unique dialogue and scenes based around the Dark Urge, plus based around the Dark Urge's past. Exactly where that goes, we don't know. It's all sort of grey here at the moment, but it's just worth pointing out as a bit of a warning here that unless you really want to roleplay as this sort of a character, I wouldn't be investing too much of a time into it, but it's definitely something that I would consider doing on a second playthrough, or even your first playthrough if you just love violence and cruelty in video games. But you know, that's entirely up to you. But they will definitely be an interesting class, both as sort of an evil villain type character or trying to resist those urges. There's a lot of roleplay options in the Dark Urge, but there's nothing specific that we can say about either the race or the class or the gender and that sort of thing, because you pick those yourself. So they are sort of a very unique character in that way. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Which of the origin characters are you picking, or are you going to pick a custom character? I'm really interested to know what people's opinions are for when the game comes out. But thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.